Okay, this video is about leaning into your subconscious. And this is something that I've kind of learned and figured out through studying with C.S. Joseph and understanding the four sides of the mind and the 16 personalities. If you haven't listened to his materials, then this might be a little tough to understand, but maybe understanding the concept will make you want to go and study from over there. But actually before that we need to talk about the temples. So we're going to start by talking about the four temples. So there's four temples, and you need to understand the temples. You understand the four sides of the mind. So you understand what leaning into your subconscious even means. Okay? And this has to do with the 16 personalities with the four letters, like E or I, S or N, F or T, and then J or P. So, ENFJ, ISTP, INTJ, ESFP, whatever, right? So, the four temples are the body temple, heart temple, mind temple, and soul temple, and each of them have a different focus. And this is you can learn about this more deeply on C.S. Joseph's channel. He has podcasts and YouTube you can check out. But I'll just give you some basic information about it to understand. So let's start with the body temple. The body temple, there's four types in each temple, okay? The body temple is all about leaving a legacy. So everything they do, it's like, how are people going to remember me by, okay? The heart temple is about passion, really. And so when heart temple people have someone cross them, they will get even, or they will do things like extreme things, because they're just all about passion. It's just like, how could you do this to me? Try not to cross a heart temple person in your life. They feel things intensely, okay? When they get involved in something or involved in a relationship, it's just really all consuming to them. They're very passionate about it, okay? And then the mind temple is all about learning. So that's kind of their lifelong focus, is about learning things, and as well as teaching. Even they can be great teachers to teach people the things they know, but that's their focus. And the soul temple is all about character. So with the soul temple, they make decisions based on their character and other people's character. So if they think making a certain decision would be something that would give them a bad character, or that certain hanging out with certain people with a bad character or something, they would be like, no thank you, I don't want to be that kind of person. Or I choose to, I'm there, it kind of depends on what their trajectory is, where they're currently at, with how they choose that, how they perceive other people, how they perceive themselves, and what is someone with a good character, and they're just very perceptive of human nature and what makes someone have a good character. And so they might look at a heart temple person and be like, well, I'd never do that because that would mean I had a crappy character. But the heart temple has a completely different come from, right? So just to go over it, the types in each temple, the body temple types are INTP, ESFJ. Actually, I probably need to have it right in front of me. ENTJ and ISFP. The mind temple types are ISTP, ENFJ, INFJ, and ESTJ. And you'll notice there's two in each temple. There's two types that are opposite, so the opposite letters. And then the soul temple types are INFJ, ESTP, ENFP, and ISTJ. And the heart temple types are INTJ, ESFP. Hang on, let me think for a second. ESFP. Oh, I already said that one. Hang on. Heart temple types. Oh, yeah. ISFJ and ENTP. Okay, so now when you have, let's say you figured out which your type is, that's the type of your ego, the type of your conscious mind. And you have all the other four types of that temple in your mind, the four sides of your mind. So you have your ego, your subconscious, your unconscious, and your superego. And so there's one type for each of those sides of the mind. So really, like, that can be why some people are like, "Oh, don't put me in a box. Like, I'm so different. I'm so unique." Like, yeah, well, there's four sides of your mind. So, um, but people tend to live in their ego the most often, and you'll see the other sides of their mind come out when um just different situations. Maybe they feel comfortable, maybe they got drunk, maybe they're actually like choosing, like, which is what I'm going to talk about, is choosing to lean into your subconscious. um so your subconscious type is the type that is the opposite four letters of your main type. So I'm an ENFP and I have an ISTJ subconscious. Now my ENFP is very just like intuitive, go with the flow, and like having fun, whereas like my subconscious ISTJ type is very organized and just like all about like putting things into order and doing things in a methodical way. So, leaning into your subconscious, it's a little secret that I learned as I have been studying the types. It's how you find balance. And I visually think of like one of those um easels that people sometimes use. I used to see them at church all the time, to like put a picture on. It's like this triangle and it has these like three sticks. I can't even, I have one hand holding my phone, so I can't really like show you. But there's three sticks holding up this easel, and then there's like a place for to hold the picture, right? The holding into your subconscious is like that back stick that goes to the back, and it's like helps be the two sticks be more supported, you know. So that's kind of like a visual of leaning into your subconscious. But when you know what your type is, you are going to think about, what's my subconscious type? It's the opposite letters. That's your subconscious type. And you're going to study that type and be like, how can I lean into that type? How can I lean into that part of my mind? Because that is where you're going to find balance when your ego is going out of control, and when somebody is just like, out of control. Like when they're just like, when when you're around somebody whose ego is like gone wonky and gone out of control. um it's just like, you're just feeling like, wow, something's off inside of me, right? And it can be coming out, or it can be just like an inner feeling, just like, what's wrong with me? Lean into your subconscious. So I'm going to give you some examples of each type leaning into their subconscious. I'm just going to get myself my paper, just so I can do this thoroughly and not forget any of the types. Okay. So, I'll try to come up with good ideas for each type, but you might come up with some of your own for your own type. So, I'll start with my type. So, ENFP, I like wrote down ideas on a note card and put it on my mirror of like, what does it mean to lean into my subconscious? And for me, it was like, make a list of things you need to get done, or things to organize, or like organize your house. You think, right? Write a list of to-dos. And then I thought about anything that has those bottom two functions, that if you understand the cognitive functions in your personality, your bottom two are basically like what that other type leads with. So for me, an ISTJ subconscious is leading with introverted sensing and extroverted thinking. So it's like thinking, sensing. So it's like anything you can do to be more in your senses and be logical and be thinking about things. So actually, like the job that I recently started doing definitely put me into my subconscious more. Like I had to really get in my senses, really think about things. And every time I do that, it kind of puts me into my subconscious, and like I'm a bus driver. So like that is something ENFPs tend to live in their mind all the time and just be like, what's possible? What can make me feel good? And like to be like, this is what's logical. And like living in your senses is a very different uh, human experience. So that is one example. On the other hand, like for like an ISTJ, if someone who has an ISTJ subconscious, um, if they need to be leaning into their subconscious, they need to be more like an ENFP. They need to kind of learn to let go, need to learn to like need to be like, what do I actually feel right now? And kind of like, man, I know ISTJ people, and I'm just thinking about getting them to loosen up and have fun. Like, what are the possibilities of something that could make me feel good? That's a good question for an ISTJ to lean into their subconscious ENFP. Anyway, okay. So here we go. An ISTP has an ENFJ subconscious. So, like, it's like I'm going to have to actually, to do this, I'm going to have all, like, it's going to be more useful to have my cognitive functions all laid out. So, okay, ENFJ leads with FENI. ISTP leads with TISE. I have it all written on my wall here. So to lean into, for an ISTP to lean into their subconscious, they need to think about, what does everybody else feel? What would create harmony with the people I'm surrounded with? What does this person I'm with feel? And how can I make them feel good? Okay, like that's like the leaning into subconscious, you're literally just thinking about the inferior function and like, how do I actually focus on that function? I mean, and then like the next function from the bottom is what to go with, right? So I don't think I can turn this around, can I? Maybe I can. I just don't see a button that turns. Yeah. Okay. So the ENFJ subconscious. Or ENFJ, yeah. Their subconscious is TI. So for them to lean into their subconscious, it's to say, what is actually logical and true? What do I really think is true? They tend to be strong about how everyone else feels and their vision for the future, but they need to be like, what's true, to lean into their subconscious. An ESFJ has an FE hero, and they have a TI. So it's like the same thing as ENFJ. Like ESFJs are always thinking about like, what does everyone else feel? How can I make everyone else feel good? But to lean into their subconscious to overcome like the ego is for them to think, what do I actually think is true? Again, an ESFP who comes from sensation and authenticity, or extroverted sensing, introverted feeling, they're leaning, for them, those are like the partiers, like the party people. For them to lean into their subconscious is to think like, what about my future? What's my plan for the future, for my future? That's for them. That's NI, inferior. Lean into your subconscious through that. For an ESTP who is coming from extroverted sensing and introverted thinking, for them to lean into their subconscious, it's also, they have NI subconscious. So like they're also should be thinking, what about my future? How do I see my future? They can just be like in the moment and thinking about what they think is true. They need to think like, what's my future? And to follow that up, like they have FE child. FE is their third function. So you need to think like, how do I see my future, and how is that going to make people feel? And I guess I didn't say like what their subconscious type is, but an ESTP has an INFJ subconscious, and ESFP has an INTJ subconscious. So, and then an ENTP that has extroverted intuition as their hero, introverted sensing as their inferior function. So they're leaning to their subconscious to lean into their introverted sensing function. So they need to think about like, how can I organize my life? How can I get into my sensing? And like introverted sensing is also about memory, tradition, and it's about how you're physically interacting with your own world and like the meaning you've made from your own world. So that can mean like organizing, or being like, I'm going to try minimalism somehow, or being like, I'm going to make a box with labels in it and like, put papers papers in order, For someone with introverted sensing inferior, it's really helpful if they have someone in their life that's really organized. Like my first husband was very organized. He helped me to be more organized. So I'll just say that. Okay, so an INFP, now going to the introverted types, an INFP has an ESTJ subconscious. Their inferior function is extroverted thinking. So they need to really work on their rationale. They have to go full stop on their like authenticity, on their introverted feeling, extroverted intuition, flowing with the vibes and what makes them feel good, and be like, but what does everyone else think? What is the rationale behind all the things that I think are true? What does this person think? What do those people think? That's how they lean into their subconscious. Or what's effective? That's another good question for them to lean into their subconscious. Is this effective, like what I'm doing? Okay, so for an INFJ to lean into their subconscious gateway or their inferior function is extroverted sensing. So they need to be like, and this is for, I should actually just do 2 at a time. That would make more sense. INTJ and INFJ, they both have extroverted sensing. Inferior, that's the gateway to their subconscious. They need to go and have a sensory experience, like give other people a sensory experience. Like I know an INFJ friend who once went sailing, that's very like lean into your subconscious kind of thing. Or like going horseback riding with somebody, because extrovert sensing is about like, what are we all experiencing together, so it's like giving somebody a big old experience, or having a sensory experience with a whole bunch of people. Maybe taking a bunch of friends out for a night on the town or whatever. I do not know why that. Weird. I'm like tapping my screen. What is this thing? Okay, so an ISFJ, and let's see, and an ISTJ has NE, or extroverted intuition inferior. For them to lean into their subconscious means to explore the possibilities because they can be very much about what they like what they're used to. This is how we've always done it. This is the tradition. This is the right way to do things. So for them to lean into their subconscious is to be like, how can I map out or think of all the different possibilities? How can I explore what different kinds of meaning there is to different people or to myself? Like maybe I'm wrong about something. Like what if there's another way of seeing this? Okay. Okay, so we did ISTP already. Okay, INTP. I have a child who is an INTP, and I totally use this on him to help. And you can use this with your children too. That's the other thing. It's not just about you finding balance, but people in your life being like, this is how I can help them come back into balance when they're out of balance. Is to like push them into their subconscious mind, into the subconscious side of their mind. INTP though has an FE inferior function. So this is all about harmony, extroverted feeling. So an INTP, like these people are like hiding away doing research at libraries, or like doing things on their laptops, or probably playing video games for a lot of them at this point, because video games are so big, but they're like, just exploring what they think is true to them. But for them to lean into their subconscious would be to like go be around the people that mean something to you and figure out how you're useful, figure out how you can make other people feel good, how you're needed. That is what I tell my son when he goes and hides away in his room. I'm like, I'm like, because they like ESFJ is their subconscious type, which is like the caretaker. So you need to tell your INTP person in your life, you need to go be around people so you know how you're needed, because that is the only way your FE function is gonna show up, is like realizing like, this is unfair. That's what FE does. This is unfair. It shows up in social situation as like, and it's like, this is unfair. I can't handle this. Why are we doing this? So I told my son that as I'm like, it's just like beautiful when you do this for people because it's like their whole life, you know, like when you for sure know somebody's ego and oh, you know, we didn't do ESTJ or ENTJ. We should do that. I was like trying to come up with a conclusion, and here we go. So ESTJ and ENTJ have an FI inferior. So for them to lean into their subconscious, that's introverted feeling, by the way, for them to lean into their subconscious is for them to be like, but how do I really feel about that? What are my values? Just kidding. Like they can be so obsessed with being effective and efficient and doing what makes sense that they can be like unaware of how they really feel about things. And they need to sit down and maybe write in their journal. That would be a good way, I think, for them to step into authenticity, like to be like, how do I really feel about this? Hang on, like I need to be like, what are my values? Am I actually acting within my value system? Is what I did there to be efficient actually in alignment with how I want to feel, or how I want to um how my values, do my values really come across when I act that way, trying to be really efficient or something? That would be those guys leading into their subconscious. I hope you found this video useful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll see you in another video sometime soon.